Hello everyone, I'm Jack and I'm back. And we're continuing with making the C8 hood copy. So I have my splash mold, I did it, surface prepped it, put on the gel coat, and now it's time to start adding the fiberglass. All right, you can see that if you look close, some leaves got in it. There were actually more than that. I got out what I could. Those that are there are still pretty solidly there. And I'm afraid if I pull them out, it's going to damage the gel coat. So there's going to be leaves encased in this. Hopefully when I put the fiberglass on there, maybe it'll soften them up, but I just don't want to risk damaging my gel coat because that's what you see. And again, this is just for a prototype, so it's not like it's a production part. All right, so I already poured out my 2 cups of resin. I have switched. I am now using this Bondo resin. I don't highly recommend it, but it is better than nothing. I actually ran out. I had 15 gallons of resin at the shop and I checked and it's all either gone or gone bad. And my supplier is 2 hours away and not open on the weekend. So I just needed something. I wanted to finish this by the weekend. I'm barely going to make it. So I grabbed this. This is also stupid expensive. It's $61 a gallon now. And I can buy it from my supplier for $38 a gallon. But again, it's not an option. I did order some from Amazon, but same thing. It was going to take a week to get here. So this is my only option. All right. Time is money. All right, so here is my container with my 2 cups. And then here is my MEKP. So like I said before, 5 milliliters is the minimum. I would mix it hotter to speed things up, but I am afraid that might aggravate the gel coat. Don't know that for sure, but I'm not taking any chances at all. All right, so pour in my 5 milliliters. Stir it up. Now the one thing I noticed about this resin as compared to what I have been using, this stuff has got a lot, it's more viscous. It's not quite honey thickness, but it's close, whereas the other one was really thin. Doesn't matter, it just might make it a little bit harder to get the parts soaked all the way through, but I used it on another part and it worked. All right, so that's mixed up. Let me get my stupid brush. I had it right here. I thought it was right here. There it is. These are all scraps of fiberglass mat that I have from previous efforts. They were actually patterns, and I've decided I'm not saving these patterns, so might as well use them up. I've used most of the big ones already. I'm down to that last one big one, and then the rest are literally scraps. No big deal. It all works the same. All right, so I don't know, about a year ago, there was a huge debate about whether to cut or tear fiberglass mat. I don't care. This is the back side. Who cares if it's got a hump somewhere here or there or wherever? Doesn't matter. All right, so if you look at the shape of that scrap piece of fiberglass, looks like it's going to cover this. Probably that. All right. So you don't have to do it this way, but it is much easier to get the fiberglass soaked if you put fiberglass underneath it. And since I'm not worried about the thickness like I was with the gel coat, it is the fastest to just pour this on here. The reason I'm worried about fastest is because I'm chasing daylight and mosquitoes. Mosquitoes have been ferocious here, but they don't come out until dusk, which, probably 30 minutes from now. All right. And it's almost impossible to put too much fiberglass resin on this because it's just going to soak into the fiberglass mat. And it will also get spread when I go to the next step, which you'll see. All right. And again, I don't have to cover all of this. It just is going to help when I saturate. All right, and I pretty much used all of this. I'll have to mix another batch after I put this on here. All right, so now I place my fiberglass mat on top of this. I usually set it down and lay it out and mark it up and all that. Right now, I'm just not going to do that because I'm trying to get this done as quickly as possible. All right, so I'm making sure that it covers this back edge. And this could get thrown over there. I'm missing a little spot here on the nose. But once you get this laid down, it's a little difficult, there we go, to move. All right, that looks good enough. All right, so you can see that it pretty much hits the area. So now what you do is you take your brush and they call stipple it. You go in and push the mat down so that it gets saturated by the fiberglass resin that you put underneath. And I tend to go along the edges first because the edges are least flexible. And sometimes you need it to make a turn. Any place that you know it's going to have to make a turn, go ahead and do that early because the fiberglass resin breaks up the bonding agent in the mat and allows it to go around corners, makes it more flexible. All right, so come over here, spread this out. All right, so something I do, they have fiberglass rollers. But again, I'm lazy, I hate cleaning stuff up. So I just take a regular 6-inch small diameter roller. I actually put tape around it, clear box tape. And because otherwise it tries to soak up the resin, which I don't want it to do. And then I do this. And I actually do press down on this, and my goal is to get it soaked. Ideally, this would all turn that dark color because that lets you know that it has soaked up the resin. Now at some point it starts picking up the hairs because it gets the resin on here and then it starts softening and it picks it up. So I just do this enough to minimize the amount I have to do later. Not trying to get it perfect. All right, so let me go ahead, might as well pour this out here. Good enough. And of course I don't want this to conglomerate there, so I will use the brush. And you don't want to brush this because it picks up and moves the little fiberglass hairs. We'll call them hairs. All right, another batch. Got some over here. I was clearing out the end of the last container. Not quite 2 cups, but but it's close. So let's say a cup and a half. So again, there's the 5 for the 2 cups. This is going to be a little hotter, but it actually has a protective layer in between it and the gel coat. So just like with the gel coat, I try to get it done instead of doing all of it a little bit and then coming back. I just try to get what I try to finish it as I go. All right. And so at this point, I can actually brush this on somewhat. I missed a little corner here. I'll come back and hit that. And then I go off on the edge because the mat turns kind of transparent. And so when you find the edge right there, you can see that I am at the edge, and that's where the black is. So if I see black, and that's because, of course, I don't want an edge with no fiberglass resin on it. So I just keep going towards the edge till I see the black edge. If it's got a light space like that, that means there's air pockets there. So you can take your brush, either stipple it harder, or sometimes you can rub it back and forth. But ideally, you'd like to get all of the air bubbles out. All right, so I am going to go ahead and quickly apply So you can see as I go, it goes from being white to being black when it gets completely saturated. All right, there's a little spot right there that could use some material. So I'm going to grab at my, there we are, at my scraps, lay this over here and saturate it. Now of course it's going to be twice as thick where that overlaps, but it's not something that matters in this case. Because the other thing is I've got to put another layer. It's got to be at least 2 layers to be strong enough to hold it shaped correctly. Now I estimated how far to put fiberglass resin here. It wasn't quite far enough, but it doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish the top layer, and then I'll lift that up and prime it with fiberglass. Well, there's my first mosquito I've seen, buzzing me. All right, gonna need another batch. All right, there was more in this previous one than I thought, so might as well get it out and use it. And honestly, if you can, you want to start from the center and work your way out. I didn't do that. So you can see, maybe you can see over here, there are some air pockets. And again, they do make rollers to do this. I hate cleaning them afterwards. And so, since this is not rocket science, it's not a big deal if I get a few air pockets here and there. All right, now I'm ready for the next batch. I would like to get 2 layers on here. I might not be able to for 2 reasons. 1, time, and 2, I might not have enough. Although there's a lot of little scraps, but it's going to be very time consuming to consume those little scraps. All right, so I'm going to pour out my 2 cups. Here we go. Do my 5 milliliters. Right there. Stir it up. Now, from the looks of things, this will be enough, by my estimation, to complete the first layer on the hood. Could be wrong, but that's what my calibrated eyeball tells me. Because you can see it's almost got this. It might be a little short. All right, got that. The other reason I'd like to get the next layer on this is because then if there is excess resin, it'll get soaked up in the next layer. Otherwise, it'll just be on the surface here and it'll be excess. So the purists care about that because obviously the more resin you put in here, the heavier this thing is going to be. This isn't a race part. It isn't anything other than something that takes up space so I can see what shape it needs to be. Like I said previously, I'm only using this center section right here. So honestly, I should have done this center section, and then if I didn't have enough to do the rest, it wouldn't be a big deal because I'm not really planning on using it. But I wouldn't mind having the whole hood. And it only means wasting a little bit of resin and fiberglass mat. All right, so like I said, I did not cover this area, prime it, I'll call it. So I'm going to flip this back up. Oh, the other thing is that the gel coat's tacky. So once you put this down, it starts pulling fibers out of the mat. And then when you go to do this, you're moving these fibers around. And then they clump up like this, make kind of a matted mess. Again, not a big deal, but be ideal if that wasn't the case. All right, I think that's about the right shape to cover this. Yep. Now on some of these, I've got the silver tape extends past the black. So right here I can see, yep, there's a black edge, there's a silver tape edge. Okay, ideally I'd like for it to go to the edge of the silver tape, but it doesn't matter. All right, so that's got that area covered. Oh, the other thing is that any of these components, they cure faster the larger volume. So if you were to fill this thing up and leave it full, it would cure way faster than this that I'm spreading out thin. So just a warning, you want to get it out of the container as quickly as possible. So there's one of my leaves, and luckily it did come loose. I don't know if you noticed, the others did not. All right. Now it's not as big a deal if the leaves get on the fiberglass because I'm not worried about damaging the fiberglass like I am the gel coat. I mean, it'd be ideal if I didn't, but it won't kill anything if I do. Now, one of the advantages of doing my patterns is that, in this case it won't help because it's black, but if it's not black and I mark it with a Sharpie, then I can see exactly where the edge of things are. It's not a big deal right now, but there are times that I'm trying to get the backside smooth, or I'm skinning something and it's not the backside, it's actually the front side. And so in that case, I really don't want it to overlap. And again, this is where the people that say tear it come in, because if you tear it, then the edges aren't twice as thick. They may be thicker, but they're not twice as thick. All right, so I can see where this edge is. I don't need all this excess. So I'm coming through and cutting it. The disadvantage of doing this is it messes up, puts an air pocket there, so I'm going to have to come back in and undo that air pocket. All right. So now the question is, how do I do this to waste as little as possible? So that looks about right. All right, so where this overlaps, it's twice as thick. If I cared, obviously I wouldn't do this. But I don't care if it's twice as thick. And so the question becomes, do I cut off this excess or do I just leave it? I'm going to go ahead and cut it. So I've got roughly a ½ inch where these overlap. What I don't want is a gap between the two. All right, and while I'm touching all this up, I'll go along this edge right here and get rid of the air pockets that I created by cutting. All right. And there's my mosquitoes. So obviously I didn't beat them. So my next thing to beat is daylight. And because I spread the fiberglass resin all over, I really need to get this first layer all the way down. All right, didn't make it. So the question is that 1 cup or 2 cups? I'm going to guess 2. All right, so set everything down. I'll do 1 cup. I can always do another one. The thing about the fiberglass is it doesn't matter if you have extra and you put it on, unlike, there we go, the gel coat. And if I weren't in the middle of this, I would run inside and put on some mosquito repellent, but I want to finish this. Yeah, after seeing this, I think a cup's going to be more than enough. And so now what I'm doing is hitting all these light areas because this will soak in somewhat by itself. And that way it saves me time of trying to stipple all this in. Then I'll come back after I've covered these other areas. And there will be way fewer areas to touch up. All right, so the same thing, I see some air pockets here. Again, not 100% that it has to be done, but as long as I have the material and the time. So if you care, you could spend your time getting rid of all of these air pockets. And I tell people I'm the 80-20 rule. I can get 80% of it done in 20% of the time, and the other 20% takes 80% of the time. So my goal here is to get it 80% done as quickly as possible. All right, got that. Now I'm going to start piecing things together. Let's see, I thought I had one more, there we go. One more relatively large piece right here. And so I can see that there's pretty much a straight edge here. And so I'm going to follow that straight edge. All right. Now I come in with the scissors. There's a pretty close to straight edge here, so I'll do that. And then missed a little spot right there. So we'll get it. And then a little spot here. Now at the shop I have a huge roll of this, and I could have just gone and gotten a huge roll, done this all in pretty much one fell swoop, but instead I'm just getting rid of all this scrap stuff. I've had it for a year. Right. And this is where it comes in, being able to see what you have and haven't covered. In this case, it's not as difficult because it's the first layer. It's the second layer where it really gets tough to say, oh, is that 2 layers of fiberglass or 1? But for this first layer, you can just look at the texture and tell. All right. Just so happens that this little piece right here doesn't quite fit that. All right, so all right, all that's close enough. Again, if I cared, I would have torn these pieces and the frayed edges would have blended in, but I don't care. All right, these extra pieces I put, it's going to be better if I soak underneath first, then put this on top. It would soak through, but it's obviously going to take twice as much effort to do so. And that lazy thing comes in. All right, same thing here. Go ahead and saturate underneath. Another one of those leaves that's hanging around. Oops, I want that way. And again, the one thing I don't want is an area that is not covered by fiberglass, because gel coat is very fragile. And guess what? This isn't going to be enough. And you'll notice as you're doing this, sometimes you get these stragglers sticking up. You really want to knock those down because they'll cut you. So after I do this, after the fiberglass is cured sufficiently, the first thing I do is run a coarse sander and knock down all those pieces that stick up, because like I said, they hurt. They hurt bad. Yep, sure enough, a little bit short. Alright, so what's happened is I'm out of MEKP in the bottom. It is at 5, little less than 5, which is just fine because this is only 1 cup. The other thing to watch out for is once you get resin on your hands and you touch the fiberglass mat, it comes off stray hairs on your hands, which is quite annoying. Again, wear gloves. All right. Well, it looks like I'm not going to get the second layer on like I wanted to, but not a huge deal. It just would have been nice to have gotten this thing done tonight. My goal was to have this finished by the end of the weekend, so I kind of missed that. All right. So I'm not sure if you can see it, but right here I did not lift this up and do the bottom side. There's a big white area right there, and it's just going to be challenging to get that to fill in. And I would have just poured this in this area, but it's tight between me having the right amount mixed and not. So this way it makes sure that I'm not wasting it. I hate to pour it on there and then go, oh man, if I just had a little bit more. This way I'm using it judiciously. But it looks like that was not a reasonable fear, because looks like I'm going to have slightly more than enough. By the way, mosquitoes are feasting on me, so I will be more than happy to get this finished and get inside where I am protected. So I don't know if you can see, again, there's another one of those white areas where things overlapped. Another one right there. So the key is to soak those areas with any excess you have. Won't solve the problem, but it'll help. All right, there's one of those areas. So right now I've got just enough extra resin to go along and fix any air pockets I see and try to fix these lighter colored areas. And again, if I cared, I could sit here and work this in, roll it, do a lot of things to get rid of all of the air pockets. But again, it doesn't matter for this part. And in fact, this area right here that I'm working on, I'm not even going to use this. I'm only going to use that center area over there. And then probably up here. So this area down here won't even get used. So spending time making it perfect is not a good use of my time. All right, that looks pretty good. Oh, that's a leaf. So no matter how much I work on that, same thing there, there's a leaf there. All right, I don't see any bad areas other than right there. And these edges I'm working on, they should be outside the boundary of the actual hood. And it actually looks like I kind of missed the edge over here. Disappointed in myself. Because this is the early area and the resin has actually started to harden. Can fix it, it's just not going to be as good as it would have been if I wouldn't have made that mistake. And if you get down like this and you need just a little more resin, I can take my brush, rub it on this edge, and there is just a little more resin. So there's air pockets right there, and I think the fiberglass or the resin is too cured to fill in those. But again, like I said, that's part of it. I'm not going to use it anyway. As long as I'm doing it, I would have rather have done it better. Now what you can do is, if that did matter, after it's cured, you could come in and grind out where you see the air pockets and then fill those in with fiberglass mat. So it's not the end of the world. Because yeah, see, there's air pockets here that won't come out because it's cured too much. Yep. All right. that's it, folks. So, man, mosquitoes ate me alive. All right, so now all I gotta do is let it sit. It takes a couple hours to cure. If it wasn't late and the mosquitoes weren't eating me and blah, 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 I would go ahead and do another layer. But I'm not going to. All right, that's it. Like, subscribe, hit the alert, hit the thanks if you want to donate. And if you don't like what I'm doing, you don't know Jack. Bye.